Thank you.
Again? Yeah, we had a. Tom is. We actually.
Reminder that we are live now.
Counselors basically. And,
There we go.
and,
Good morning. I'll call the meeting to order for the May 23rd, 2023 meeting at 9:30 a.m. Welcome, everybody. We've had some people who have given regrets. We're not here today, but we do have Scotty's on Zoom and Harge is on Zoom as well. If it's possible to have your camera on during, I would appreciate that just to make sure everybody can see. And then we'll make sure we are when we're voting, just to make sure that everybody can see. That's straight. I will start with the territorial greeting. We begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Arawandran, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Lenape peoples, who have longstanding relationships to the land, water, and region of southwestern Ontario. The local First Nation communities of this area include Chippewa of the Thames First Nation, United Nations of the Thames, Munsee Delaware Nation, and Delaware Nation at Moravian Town. In the region, there are 11 First Nation communities and a growing Indigenous urban population. We value the significant historical and contemporary contributions of local and regional First Nations and all the original people of Turtle Island. Let's ask if there's any modifications to the agenda. Is there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Being none. Excellent. We'll move on to item 4.1, lands, facilities, and conservation areas overview. Brent Bashir, please.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Brent Bashir, I'm the manager of the Lands, Facilities, and Conservation Areas Division. Let's give me a moment here to pull up the presentation. So as you're all aware, we're going to be going on a brief tour later this morning, and we're going to be looking at some of the Fanshawe Conservation Area lands as well as the Fanshawe Conservation Area. So this presentation will be kept fairly brief and high level. Next slide, please. And we'll talk about the division structure, who we are, what we do, as well as the programs and services of the different management units within the division. So the land management unit, the fleet and facilities management unit, and the conservation areas unit. Next slide, please. So at a glance, this is the lands, facilities, and conservation areas, and I'm going to say LFCA for short now because it's a big, long term. But this is the organizational chart for our division. It's split into 3 management units. The land management unit, which is led by Brandon Williamson, he's the land management coordinator. The fleet and facilities management unit, which reports directly to myself, and the conservation areas unit, which is led by Damien Schofield, who's our conservation areas coordinator. Next slide. So first, the land management unit, it's broken down into 2 program areas, the UTRCA lands and properties, as well as the ESA lands. And so a smaller group that we're looking to develop in the near future, depending on how the land management strategies work out. So next slide. Fleet facilities management unit. So although we only have 2 fleet management staff and 2 facilities management staff, it's an integral component of conducting UTRCA business. So without these departments, we wouldn't be able to operate our vehicles and maintain our infrastructure and our assets. So although they're small, they're certainly mighty. It's also a service cost center. So similar to finance, HR, and IT, it is a service cost center for all of the authority. Next slide, please. So the conservation areas unit, it's our largest unit, as you can see, lots of full-time staff, contract staff, and also a seasonal complement of 60 plus positions, I believe, this year. So lots of staff working hard within our conservation areas. Wildwood, led by Paul Switzer, as superintendent. Fanshawe, led by Allison Miller, who's a superintendent. And Piddock, led by Stephen Muslow, superintendent. Next slide. So a little bit about programs and services. Land management of approximately 5,800 plus hectares. So as you see on the figure there on the right, that's the UTRCA watershed. Throughout the watershed, we own and manage a number of different passive day use area onlys, or day use only area CAs. tracks and arboretums. So these CAs, public access is free for hiking, biking, bird watching, fishing, and just enjoying the outdoors. Many of these, sorry, just 1 second. Many of these passive CAs are either managed or co-managed by local service clubs throughout the watershed or by the local municipalities. So the roles and responsibilities are outlined within each of the management agreements, long-term management agreements, and you'll typically see risk management, hazard tree risk management, and other items taken care of by UTRCA staff, and some of the more basic tasks such as garbage pickup or grass cutting or weed trimming would be taken care of the service clubs or the municipality. The aim here is to continuously improve the ecological health of these properties throughout the watershed and offer outdoor recreational opportunities. The land management unit also maintains a number of natural areas such as wetlands, floodplains, woodlands, and meadows. 2,000 plus hectares, of which 1,500 plus hectares are wetlands. About 300 plus hectares are floodplains, also known as Scheme 43. And this was a three-party agreement that was developed between the 70s to 90s that ultimately ended up with UTRCA owning a number of floodplains purchased by the province and by the member municipality. So for these lands, we have limited access. There's hunting programs, or we typically would post these for no public access. What? So another component of our land management unit includes land leases and agreements. We have a number of agricultural lands. These lands leases occur primarily on parcels of land holdings that were purchased for our flood control reservoirs. We have golf course land leases. So the Fanshawe Golf Course here, which we'll kind of tour around and mention and get into more detail in the tour, but that is operated by the City of London. It's not entirely within the UTRCA lands, but a portion of that land is on UTRCA property, including the clubhouse. Forest City National Golf Course under private ownership also is under a land lease with the UTRCA. And the third one there with the asterisk is the Green Hills Golf Course. So this one's a unique arrangement where the ownership is under the Ontario Heritage Trust. So we're in a management agreement with them, and we lease the lands to the Green Hills private ownership, who maintain and operate a golf course there as well. The UTRCA cottage program. So we have cottages here at Fanshawe, which we will tour through later today. As well as Wildwood. And then again, rental houses and barns, there's currently 9 of them, and these fall under the Residential Tenancies Act, as does our cottage program now. The final component of the land management team is the environmentally significant areas management. So we currently, there's 12 ESAs under management agreement with the City of London and the UTRCA. These ESAs are owned primarily by the City of London and managed by the UTRCA. And within that management agreement, there's a number of called mandated activities that UTRCA staff undertake on behalf of the city, monitoring and enhancing natural resources, enforcement such as encroachment, Conservation Authorities Act or the City of London bylaws, risk management and hazard tree program, and developing and maintaining trail network and infrastructure. That's a big and key piece to what we do for the city, and public education programs and community projects. Final note there is staff are currently in discussions regarding the 2024 to 2027 management agreement with the City of London. Next slide. So next is our fleet facilities management unit. Facilities management, so the repair and maintenance of all the UTRCA infrastructure, including the Watershed Conservation Center, which was built in 2012. It's also starting to get to that point where maintenance and repairs become more and more necessary. And so that's primarily the responsibility of facilities management team of 2. And they also lead a number of the capital projects that we undertake throughout our conservation areas as well. Fleet management, again, our internal service cost center. There's currently a green fleet strategy that was developed, I believe, in 2014. And we're looking to update that and refine that for 2024. One important piece that I'll point out for the fleet management is that in 2023, we've been exploring and investigating fleet management software that will help us be able to track all of our information in one database throughout the life cycle of each of our assets. We have close to 60 vehicles and non-vehicle assets such as lawnmowers, gators, tractors, boats, all of those pieces of equipment that certainly could benefit from having all that data and information kind of all in one database. It will help us assign vehicles and equipment to various program areas and will help us realize actual costs per piece of equipment and per program area so that we can actually understand true costs of what our programs cost. So. And also with our finance department's excited about it as well, because we can access expense reports and support operations and maintenance and capital decision-making with having actual data in our fleet management. So next slide. Finally, our conservation areas unit, conservation area here in London, largest campground, 530 campsites. We'll be touring it later today. Important to note, we have a 20-kilometer lake trail that's very popular here in the city of London. Wildwood Conservation Area in St. Mary's, established in 1966, is well known for its day use opportunities. Many folks head to Wildwood Conservation Area for the reservoir for recreational boating, fishing, and passive water sports opportunities. An important piece to note there is that Wildwood has been very progressive with their accessibility, the AODA standards, with respect to their trails and their watercraft launches as well. Pittock Conservation Area Woodstock, established in 1967, is very well known for seasonal and overnight camping opportunities. And unique to Pittock is that the UTRCA and the city of Woodstock are in a land management agreement for the South Shore and in the North Shore. And so this was in the works while I was the superintendent of Pittock back in 2011, and it had come to fruition. I think it started in 2019. And so we're looking at meeting with the city of Woodstock representatives and refining that next term for the lease, which will be 2024 to 2027 as well. In general, conservation areas, what do we offer? We have campgrounds that provide both seasonal and overnight campsites, hydro, non-hydro, waterfront. We have many naturalized private campsites and recreational opportunities that include swimming pools, lake trails, and reservoir activities such as boating and fishing and kayaking and canoeing. Day use areas, you'll see later this afternoon or this morning on our tour, we have a number of pavilions and shelters that are available for rent. Picnic areas, playground areas, beach volleyball, beach access, biking, hiking, and all of those fun things, getting folks outdoors. We're also host to many special events. And then the reservoir use finally is very popular with fishing, boating, canoeing, kayak rentals. And we also have a number of clubs like the Navy League Sea Cadets, the yacht clubs, and the rowing clubs throughout all of our CAs. I believe that concludes this brief overview. Certainly there will be an opportunity to get more into detail on a number of those items as we go through our tour, but I'd like to thank you and see if you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Brett. That was excellent. There will be a lot more to learn today. He is right. Any questions right now?
Hopefully a quick question through you, either to Tracy or to Brent. The work that we have to do for the province in terms of our land inventory.
Yes.
Does that include everything that you presented that we own?
Yes, all of the CA owned and controlled lands will be outlined and included in the lands inventory, which will then help inform our CA strategy. And that's also later this morning, we'll get into as well.
Okay, thank you.
It's all of the CA owned and controlled lands.
Does that include scheme 43 lands as well?
It does, yes.
Further questions? Seeing none, thank you. I will now entertain a motion to accept the presentation. Peter, please, first, and seconded by George. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We'll now move down to section 5, administrative business, approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. Is there a mover for the minutes? Paul, please, seconded by Hugh. Discussion on those. That's correct. There is a couple of errors that were corrected, I believe. And then so that's what we're approving today is the corrected version.
But nothing substantial in the correction.
Nope, it was just Jim Craigmile and Skylar were listed as being online. Where they were both in person.
They were. Excellent. And no discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. I don't believe there's any business arising from the minutes or correspondence.
Sorry, did we get a mover and a second for that? I think I interrupted.
is Paul and Hugh.
Oh, thank you. Oh, sorry.
We'll move down to number 6, report for consideration. The Finance and Audit Committee met and they've looked over the audit financial statement. So I'll turn that over to Tracy for any further explanation.
Sure. Thank you. Through the chair, I just wanted to mention that at the Finance and Audit Committee meeting, one of the first things to do was to elect a new chair. Sandy was elected, so you'll see his name on the report as well. And I would pass it over to Sandy if there's anything else to add.
No, you'll just notice that the document in your package says draft. It will become final based on what happens today, if there's any corrections or changes. And if regardless, well, if there's corrections and changes, they have to go back to the accountant before they come back to this board. But otherwise, if we pass the recommendation in front of us, number one, they'll become final. And they'll be posted publicly as required, as we've been doing anyway for a number of years. So happy to try and handle any questions, and because Christine is on vacation.
Are there any questions from the board on the report? Mark.
Yeah, unless I'm missing something, just generally curious as to why the municipal general levy for the 2022 budget was just over 5 million. And the actual was just over 4 million.
Yeah, we asked that at audit as well. And what's interesting about accounting for what we do is we are obligated under the standards only to count in revenue what we actually spend in a year. And what we receive, such as from the general levy, that we have not spent within that year, ends up on the financial statements as deferred revenue as a liability. So if you look at the statement of financial position, which is page 5 of the report, you'll notice a increase from 8.6 million to 9.2 million, which in general is a reflection of the general levy money that wasn't spent that goes into the deferred revenue. So because there's ins and outs, it doesn't exactly balance between the difference, but that's the largest component of why you see a difference in what we budgeted and what we've actually spent during the fiscal year.
I guess through the chair then, Brian. The next question would be, is there a reserve fund? Is that similar to that? Or that monies can be used in a later year for a later project? And if so, does that be used for a specific project? In other words, you couldn't spend all the money, say, on a project in Oxford County if it was general levies by all municipalities.
Well, through the chair, I would say that yes, we do put things in a reserve fund. Now, we don't necessarily specify out per county because we act as a watershed agency. You'll find that really when it comes to leveraging those municipal dollars that we receive through general levy, we're going after those contracts and grant opportunities. So many of those we consider soft revenue throughout the year, and we don't necessarily know they'll materialize. In some years, we get a lot more soft revenue generation through contracts. Thinking about the connecting natural with nature events. That was a huge federal program that we were able to get funds in and offset some of those costs that would have typically been through general levy.
But Mark, I'll also give you an example of, so in the budget, if there is a particular levy that's spent, whether it's London or Oxford County, what have you, and we haven't spent all that towards that project, that certainly is reserved to finish the work for that particular project. So the same kind of idea with the dam and flood control levies would be applied specifically to what's shown in the budget. So off the top of my head, unfortunately, we didn't ask the question of give us an example of one of those particular situations where there's levy money that's been budgeted and received from the municipality that hasn't been spent. Let's track that, and how is that set aside? My understanding, and we can confirm this with Christine at the next meeting, is that what we levy, we spend. It may not necessarily be in that particular year. It'll be in deferred revenue and then apply to work within the watershed.
Yeah, but I'll just add to that is that 100% that money was received and it will be spent for the purposes that it was. It's just not going in a general reserve. It's definitely in the deferred revenue, and like Sandy said, it will be spent when the project is completed. As we all know with municipalities, sometimes we never receive the things that we wanted, whether it's a vehicle or something like that for capital projects. There's a lot of those that haven't been able to get. So, but yeah, Christine will be able to give us a very clear example, I'm sure.
Yeah, maybe what would be helpful, I think, to the board then, Brian, is we have Christine on the agenda for June meeting to give us some specific examples to help the board understand how this deferred revenue piece works and how it's connected to projects specifically. I think that's, thank you for raising that, Mark. I think that'll be helpful to everyone.
Any further questions to report?
Second recommendation is to reappoint CBAC. We've had them now for 2 years. Our contract with them is for 5. Needless to say, if we were dissatisfied, we'd have a discussion to change that. But we've been very pleased, and they were actually very pleased with the support they got from staff to do the work of the audit. So that's our other recommendation, is that they be reappointed for another year.
Does someone like to move the recommendations? You, second by Skylar. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Excellent. They're now audited, so that's good. 6.2, category 3 cost apportioning agreements. Tracy, please.
Yes.
City Hall for Kristen brought.
Through the chair. With regards to the category 3 cost apportionment agreement, the report provided, it's really to kick off the discussions with municipalities. This is the start of a process. We've been working through determining how we categorize our programs into 1, 2, and 3. Very different method than we've ever had to consider our programs in the past, especially when everything is so integrated. But we have managed to do that with our 2023 budget amounts, and are working through the getting comments back, at least from a staff level, on a draft of our cost apportionment agreement. So I have heard back from a few, and we really have been collaborating with our member municipalities and that have shared CAs, collaborating with those conservation authorities, because there's Middlesex Center, of course, that has 5 conservation authorities within its municipal boundary. So working together with our adjacent CAs to have agreements that might have slightly different terms, might have slightly different programs and services that they offer, but at least some consistencies in how we're approaching these cost apportionment agreements. So with that, provided a little bit of a background to demonstrate when we're talking about category 3 programs and services, those are the cost apportionment agreements that we're speaking of, that require our municipalities to ensure that, yes, they want these services to continue. We've really looked at how much revenue we bring in with those leverage dollars that we've always talked about in the past, and it's substantial. So it's about 10% of our overall ask is from levy, and the rest we've been able to self-generate. So with that, having recommendation that we've provided in the report to ensure that we're directing staff, myself, to go out and seek municipal support for these agreements. If there's any questions?
Questions for Tracy?
I noticed on the page 14 of the piece for Oxford, we've got until October 20 this year as the deadline to enter into agreement. So my assumption is we've already started discussions.
Yes,
Yeah.
through the chair, that's correct.
Okay. And the package like this will be prepared for all the municipalities. It's still kind of work in progress as well?
This is a work in progress. This is an example to provide where we're at right now. There's some refinements based on some feedback from the staff level that we'll be incorporating to begin provide these packages out to our municipalities so that they too can share with their councils. And again, at the back of the Oxford agreement or the package that you see, it includes a number of the activities that we've been doing in Oxford County. One of those will be provided for our municipalities so that they can have those examples. What constitutes those category 3 services that we are seeking the cost apportionment agreements for?
And finally, Mr. Chair, is there anything, we have, except for me, all these municipal councilors. Is there anything you need the municipal councilors to talk about with their colleagues at this stage, or is it premature?
Probably a little bit premature, but in the very near future, I'll be circulating out our packages to our board of directors, so each one of you, so that you can have a preliminary look. And if you're available to have those discussions internally with staff or your other counterparts at the council table, talk about what the conservation authorities do and what you're learning here and sharing that information back to your councils, it'd be greatly appreciated.
And of course, you'll be available to them too.
Certainly.
Mark.
I was just gonna say, to people that didn't know, that at the Oxford County level, you look at the upper tier, the Oxford County level, not with each individual municipality like Woodstock or the townships. But what's nice about it, I hope it's what's nice about it, I'll say that out loud, is that Marcus Ryan, who's the warden of Oxford County, is a former UTRCA board member. So I would expect that he would be very well recognized that way.
Any further questions?
More comment, and this is a great report. When we started, seems like a long time ago, but I think it was about a year and a half, 2 years ago, and when the government came out and said, got to go into the 3 different categories, and at least to me, it was pretty foggy of what was going in the different categories. And each report that you brought has narrowed it down, and with this report, even I have a fully understanding of what's going on here, what's in the next process. But to kind of follow up to Mark's comment was thank you for the presentation of the Oxford one. So is the plan that you will go to Oxford staff and county council if they approve all those programs that will cover Oxford County?
It can.
But if they decide we will take some but not all, then you will go to the individual municipalities to just, if we want to include something that Oxford County didn't put in, is that what it's going to work?
Through the chair, that's part of it. But on the second part of it is those category 2 programs that at the municipal level, municipalities may want. An example are some of the land management activities that Brent just spoke about, example, the City of London ESA management. We do have some of those management properties in our lower tier participating municipalities too. So there may be other things. I'm certainly going to be reaching out to staff at each municipal office to see what they are interested in, if there's any additional programs and services that need to be captured by an agreement, either a cost apportionment agreement or a category 2 service agreement.
So those are agreements that are currently with the lower tier municipalities as opposed to that Oxford doesn't cover everything.
Exactly.
So there will be some, no matter what the county says, there will be some negotiation with the lower tiers.
Potentially, depending on what their agreements are.
Okay, thanks.
Any further questions? Seeing none, would someone like to move the recommendation? Tyler's moving, George second. Discussion. I'm just going to reiterate some of what Paul said there. I want to thank staff. I know this has been a huge amount of work to get to this point from where we started, and you can see clarity starting to come. And I hope our municipal partners see that as well. One of the things that really shines in there is how much value you get for your investment with UTRCA. 10% of the cost for these category 3 programs. That means 90% of the funding is coming from another source. And what we have heard as well, though, from is that this is creating costs within UTRCA to be able to do this, especially in the finance department, to be able to track. Remember that somebody may be only doing category 3, but they may be doing category 2 and category 1 work as well. So now staff have to track all that to make sure that that's being proportioned. So that's going to add cost and complexity to the organization as we go forward. So I know the original idea of this was the government was to try to save money and to make things more simple. But with everything like that, with a very complex organization, that may not happen. Again, it is important that we talk to our municipalities and make sure that they understand what's going on. I'm sure they do at the staff level. Tracy's talking very highly at the staff level. To me, the easiest and simple way through this is to make sure that we get these agreements in place. They can always be modified later, but really there is a lot of value to the services that we're already receiving. And I think that's what we're going to see at the end of the day. But the best thing is everybody's going to know what UTRCA does more than they ever have and how they do it. And hopefully that will add some clarity going forward for our members, our staff, and the government as well, and make sure that everybody's on board. Got it.
This triggered another question, because so is this the first time that we're doing these specific agreements? And in the past, it had always kind of been the UTRCA provide these services, but not necessarily in direct agreement with municipality, is kind of like side by side. I'm trying to understand, I guess, why this is different, 'cause since I'm new to the board, I don't have a historical understanding of why it's different.
Yeah, that's exactly it through the chair. It's in the past, yes, we had one levy pot and we provided services because what we do to protect people and property against flooding sometimes is wetland creation and wetland enhancement. And it might not be in that municipality, it might be upstream because those effects happen and improvements happen downstream. Same thing with water quality. Now the province is very much dictating, well, no, that's natural heritage related, that's enhancement activities. And if it's not on your land, well, then that's category 3. So you can understand why there's been some iterations and clarifications, breaking things apart and clarity through this process, because it hasn't necessarily been clear from the get-go, but that's exactly it. So now it's the municipalities having to have an agreement in place to ensure that all of our services can be provided on a watershed basis.
Yes, that's why it makes it more complicated this way, because if a municipality opts out, we're trying to do stuff watershed wide, and the water just doesn't stop from one municipality to the other. And there's some so before, municipalities appointed people to the board like they do now, and they allowed those people to make the decision on what services they would have on their behalf. And then the provincial government said, we don't like that idea. We want to make sure the municipalities 100% choose what they have for those type of services. So that's where we are now. But I think we're probably going to be pretty much status quo, I think. But again, it was definitely not as clear before at what type of investment, return on investment they were getting. So I hope that really helps people's, the municipality's decision-making process and participating in those. It is extremely important. Like I said, you can't just stop a service in one area of a watershed and not have it affect the entire watershed. Further discussion or comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Good work. Moving on to item number 7, reports in camera. And we'll ask for a mover and a seconder to go into one session on personal matters of identifiable individuals. Peter and Dean, seconded. Discussion.
Sorry. No.
Nope. We have an early, all in favor? Opposed, that's carried. Two viewers, that's kind of. Excellent. We'll now we've risen from a closed session and now we have a recommendation. Would someone like to move the recommendation? Moved by Paul, seconded by Peter, and the recommendation is the board accept the recommendation of the chair and vice chair with respect to adjusting the general manager's compensation in accordance with section 5.02 of the UTRCA personnel regulations. Excellent. Any questions of the recommendations? Would you like me to read it again? No? Paul,
Just a comment, I just want to, for the new members of the board, Tracy took over at a very trying time. COVID, where most of the staff and the board were working remotely. All the many legislative changes that we talked about earlier today. And a huge turnover in senior staff and staff overall. So I just want to make sure the rest of the board knows that she really got thrown in the deep end of this job and she hasn't sunk.
I would certainly agree with that and certainly appreciate all the sometimes the best way to just get in there and go, right? Any other comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We'll move down to section 8, reports for information. 8.1 administrative enforcement. We have our section 28 status report. Anything like to highlight?
I don't think so through you, Chair. Just that we had the recommendation at the last board meeting about bringing forward more information about those applications that are in progress, and that will be at the next month's board meeting, on our June board meeting.
Thank you. Any questions? Mark?
Not really a question, Chair, maybe just more of a comment. In the city of Woodstock, we have this retired golf course called Cedar Creek Golf Course. There was most of it, the majority of it now that the course is closed is floodplain. So we have a developer who wants to build a 10-story apartment building, literally on the edge of it. And so because we have a planning meeting in the city of Woodstock on a Monday, it was nice to receive updated floodplain maps from, hope I say her name right, Laura B. and Colin. She sent them very quickly too, and it was nice and quick explanation and stuff on it for them, one of the planners with Jenna. So I just wanted to sort of compliment and say that publicly to be able to get that information that quickly, because literally 97% of this golf course is a floodplain. And that people originally when the golf course was closed, they were thinking, oh, subdivisions. Well, of course, that wasn't going to happen, but all of a sudden you do get this area where there is going to be a 10-story apartment building built, and people are concerned or questioned, especially when it's underground parking is included. But to be able to get the floodplain maps updated, received so quickly, so I can pass them along to council.
Excellent. Very good to hear. I was lucky enough to tune into your meeting there, and that is a very interesting development. That's ingenuity at its best, trying to make things work. Peter.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Mark, where is that? Where are they building it?
Oh, this is down to Cedar Creek Golf Course. So it's right kind of it's right up where Cedar Creek is, runs on kind of underneath the 401 and kind of goes to Southside Park. And the pond in Southside Park is actually part of Cedar.
Stories.
Like that golf course has been closed for about 3 or 4 years now, and Golf North owns it. It's only a 9-hole golf course. But the odd thing about it is the city of Woodstock owns the land for the 8th and 9th holes.
It looked like a missile site over there.
So, but then the first holes 1 through 7 were owned by Golf North. So because there's still landowners there until they give the land to the city to expand Southside Park, so to speak, they were trying to detect or determine which parts of those lands could be developed for anything from single family homes to multi-family residential. And then the rest of it would go basically to the city of Woodstock as a park. So
Thank you.
I can offer more than that, but Cedar Creek runs into the Thames River at the west end of Woodstock. Yeah.
Thank you through that. I just have an interest because Councilor Frank and I have a lot of infill going on in the city of London right now. So we're just always curious about new developments going in outside the city. So interesting. Thank you.
Any further questions? I have a motion to receive the report, please. Skylar, Peter. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Number 8.2 is for your May for your information report. Lots to do in there. Everything's getting going, and everybody's getting outside. Is there anything you'd like to highlight? We'll just go to the chair.
Just through you, just a reminder that certainly when you click on that link, subscribe and also share it with your fellow counselors and ask them to subscribe as well. So we'd like to get our news and what we're doing in the watershed out there.
Keep reminding them until they tell you to stop. Excellent. We'll move on to number 9, notices of motion for June 20. Tyler.
I have 2, and this is my first time doing it at Upper 10, so I was told just to read them, which is fine. Okay, and then once I read them, they maybe go on the June agenda. Okay, wonderful. So this is following up from our last meeting when we were having discussions about barrier removals as well as energy generation. So they're 2 separate motions. One would be to direct staff to present a discussion paper to the board regarding barrier removals. So we had a great presentation about dams and weirs and the management of them. And I'm just curious as to if we have a
So
policy.
if I could, we just have them read this time and then
Okay.
we, yeah.
Wonderful. So the second motion is direct staff to review existing hydro generation at the Fanshawe Dam and review the feasibility of renewable energy generation on other UTRCA structures. And then in brackets, included but not limited to solar, wind, and hydroelectric.
Excellent. Thank you. And we'll make sure those on the June agenda and we can discuss them then. Now
We don't have to vote to get them on?
no,
Oh,
that's just placing them on there.
Wonderful. Oh, I thought I had to like argue. while- Ready.
Later.
Okay.
Very easy. As we're down to 10, chair's comments. Obviously, we're seeing nicer weather come out. Everybody's wanting to get out and get things, get out in nature. I'm sure with the long weekend, staff saw a lot of people out and about. And so I guess my only comments is make sure you get out there as well, encourage people to use the UTRCA facilities. We do have a goal of touching 1 million people with through our services, so we can help in that in lots of ways by promoting all the opportunities that are available. We'll see a lot of them today, and so have lots of information to share with everyone. But another thing that I'd like to highlight is even if people don't have the financial means to make sure to come to the conservation areas, I know that Oxford County Library, and I'm sure other libraries, they have passes available. So if you know someone who would love to get out but they just don't have maybe the to make sure they have the gate fees or do something, there's always ways to get around those barriers. And your local library is not just for books, there's lots of great other things there as well. So visit them and then make sure you get out and get out and use the facilities and see what our great outdoor spaces are about. Are there any members' comments? You.
Just a quick question. We're supposed to have an ag committee member. We have an ag committee member.
So I believe that's province, the provincial government would supply that, but they have not
Okay.
appointed one.
Oh, okay. No, it's just thought it was kind of weird. I think a year or more ago that there was supposed to be somebody to put on.
Yeah, I believe the provincial government has a lot of appointments that are unfilled at this point. So if anybody's interested in a provincial appointment, I would check out their website and maybe there's lots of opportunity out there. Scout?
Councillor Cuddy and I both sit on the health unit and are suffering from the same issue. And so we've sent a letter via the health unit to say, can you please appoint somebody? Because it does impact our quorum sometimes. So if we are really motivated, we could send a letter. We still haven't received somebody, but we sent a letter asking for some. Just as a consideration.
Absolutely.
I guess we're kind of lucky from the agricultural perspective because we have land on our board already. Maybe that's why they're not in a hurry.
Yeah, and that was really the thought as well, is that we do have municipalities and a lot of them are rural. And so we do have that voice from those members as well. So it's although it's welcome to have a different perspective as well, there we do have it. I get a point. Yep.
I can just add to the chair that only 5 CAs across the province have had an appointment of an agricultural representative. And they're mostly in the north, except for St. Clair beside us. So and that was done a long time ago, and there was an application process. However, I think that the province would have to reappoint or reinitiate that application process if more were being appointed. But there hasn't been any further requests from the province for information that we're aware of, notifications either.
Any further member comments? Dean?
One thing, through you, Mr. Chair, West Perth is hosting the Perth County Children's Water Festival coming up Sunday, May 28th from 1 PM to 4 PM, and that will be held at the Lions Park in Mitchell.
Excellent.
For your information.
I hope it's as well attended as the recent water festival, which was very well attended. Just proves that everybody wants to get out and do stuff after we've been up for a couple of years. That's going to be good for this organization. Further member comments? Seeing none, I'll turn it over to Tracy for general managers.
My comments as well through the chair are about this excellent in Children's Water Festival, where there was over 4,000 students in attendance here last week, and beautiful weather. I don't think we've ever had all 4 days of the festival as beautiful and warm and nice and sunny. And then extending the day on Thursday was the event for family night here at the park, where we saw almost another 4,000 people just in that one night too. So huge attendance, as Brian alluded to. People are wanting to get out and enjoy the outdoors. I think many discovered our parks through COVID and are making great use of them. So we're happy to have that event. Yeah, again, was going to mention the event coming up next week that Dean did, but again, we've seen that people enjoy those types of events. So hopefully we'll get the same turnout up in Mitchell.
Just to build on what Tracy said, the family night was a free event. So it was well attended, and thanks to the staff members here who have organized the water festival and the family night, they did a phenomenal job. Had lots of volunteers and lots of people from staff out there directing parking and working the displays and so forth. And I was there too and had a lot of fun. So thanks to staff.
With that, I will call for adjournment. Skylar, Peter, all those in favor? Opposed, that is carried. And I had a note here that said we'd be done at 10:30, and we are, so.
Right on schedule.